Like most adult transplants to the DC area, I discovered I had this huge blind spot when I moved to DC, something I'd never thought about before hitting DC, which was that I did not know what my own upper limit of bullshit was, which is very important for this town. There's no way to survive if you don't know how much you can get away with, how much you can stretch things if needed. So I devised this really clever but simple plan, which was I was going to interview for a job that I was just in no way qualified for, completely unqualified for. And then when I didn't get it, I would then find a job that was like, I was like a little less unqualified for. And I would just keep going down until I finally got a job. And that would be my maximum limit. I'd say, okay, I know. And I knew the perfect job to start with, because I was in no way qualified for any of it, right? It was called Senior Security Specialist for the federal government. Requirement number 1 was you had to have a minimum of 3 years experience training and managing a guard force. I could barely manage my own life, let alone a force of people's. Requirement number 2, you had to have an advanced degree in criminal justice. I didn't even know you could get a degree in criminal justice. All right, and the kicker, the third requirement, was you had to either have a top secret clearance or be able to, pass a top secret clearance, whatever they make you do for that. So I understood that it wasn't a matter of like whether I'd get busted, it was a matter of how long it would take in the process. Because a top secret clearance, I mean, they interview everybody from your neighbors when you were first born on up. I mean, so they were gonna bust me. So this was perfect. And I set about, sort of enhancing my resume, as you do, and I decided, I looked into it, there were indeed people that had programs on criminal justice, so I was able to pick a school for that, and I decided to go for a master's because, one thing about stretching things is you might as well go big. That works better. If you're gonna make a fake ID, don't say you're 21, say you're 28 or 30, whatever. And then I went for, thinking about how to do this guard force management. I decided the easiest way was to give myself some military experience. It seems like they would be happy to have a former military person anyway. That seemed like a natural fit. And it occurred to me that maybe if they tried to get info, like verifying my military service, they wouldn't be able to. I thought that maybe they would stonewall them. So I also went for the Marines because I thought they sounded more badass than anything else. And I made myself a captain. I didn't want to go too crazy, kind of middle of the road. So after I created this enhanced resume, I sent it in with a quick cover letter. And when I signed the cover letter, I did not use my first name because I thought, why give away the fact that I'm female just in case there's a little bit of macho pushback on this position. So I just signed it S. Garibaldi. And then I sent it in to the address as given. And imagine my surprise when I get this email almost immediately back asking, addressed to Mr. Garibaldi, of course. I didn't want to correct that. And the assistant of Captain Bailey was arranging an interview, and she asked if I could come in Friday morning at 0800. Now, 0800, oh my God. Okay, that's just unnecessary. I don't know why people need to do anything at that hour, but I thought it was not in line with my persona, so I just simply said, I wrote back and I said I'd be available mid-morning on Friday, and I would see her then at 0800. And then I realized, oh crap, I only have 3 days to get ready. And so I only had 2 suits, and they were both like bold colors. I didn't think someone in the Marines would wear that. So I went out and I got myself a new suit, a tasteful navy blue. And I got myself pantyhose, which I detest, but I felt it was necessary to get a suit that had a skirt, because even though I was trying to hide my femininity, I didn't want to seem like I was trying to hide my femininity. So I got that, and then the big purchase, the key one, was a new alarm clock. It's one that's made for the hearing impaired, that actually, it shakes your bed. Have you seen these? They're wonderful. I highly recommend it. And I gotta tell you, when that, and then, I tried to research everything I could about security, criminal justice, and the Marines, and everything else, until came the day. And when my alarm went off at 0600 hours, I gotta tell you, it was a little bit like, like a vampire seeing light, if that's a thing. I don't really know, but I mean, it just felt horrible. It was so unnatural, and there wasn't any light. It was still dark out. I had not known that before. It's clearly a sign from whatever force is in the universe that we're not supposed to be awake at that hour before the sun. But anyway, I did get up thanks to the shaking of my bed, and I had this battle with the pantyhose, but I made it. I triumphed, and I was a little late, but I got out of there. And of course, traffic and everything was, I was driving through this crazy traffic, and I pulled into the garage, and it was like I had 5 minutes. It was 7:55, and so I went running from the car, and so I wasn't paying much attention, and I did not see that there was a grate sticking out about an inch. Yeah, and I tripped, and I went down hard, like on both knees, and I looked, and I just realized, wow, these pantyhose are screwed, but you can't cry over messed up pantyhose, even though they're ridiculously expensive. I just went running. I picked myself up, went running for the door, and just as I was coming toward the side of the building, I see this guy who's coming out of the side door, and so I say, thank you for holding the door, because I have learned that if you thank someone for doing something, they will do that thing. He did. He held the door, and so I went in, thus kind of bypassing the security check-in at the front. And I knew they were up on the 5th floor, so I went running up 4 flights of stairs, went into the bathroom on the 4th floor, took off the pantyhose. They were just destroyed. I cleaned my knees up as best as I could, and then took a deep breath, went up 1 more flight, and stood just outside the doorway and listened. It was 7:59, and I could hear this male voice screaming at his poor assistant, Carol, 7:59. There's no way that he's going to make it here on time. I haven't even been called by the front desk. This is horrible. What kind of a person doesn't come on time to an interview? So I walked in the door, and I said, Captain Bailey, I presume. I shook his hand, and he is stunned, right? He's like, but you're a woman. And I said, I get that a lot, especially in the Marine Corps. And he said, but they didn't call up from downstairs. And I said, well, it seems there are some blind spots in your security system. Shall we go to your office to discuss some ways to repair these blind spots? So he said, well, yes. And so we go and we sit down. And we're having a pretty good interview. And I'm pretty much leading things. And he's nodding a lot, and then all of a sudden, his face totally pales, and he says, "You're bleeding." And I look down, and sure enough, I am bleeding at both knees, and I am such a bleeder. And he said, "What happened?" And I said, well, I had some extra time to kill before the interview this morning, and I couldn't resist. They have this new obstacle course over at the Marine Barracks on 8th and I. And I was trying to help this rookie get through the barbed wire crawl, and I got pulled into it. But it's just a flesh wound. I mean, it's nothing. It doesn't hurt or anything. And I said, does it bother you? And he said, no. I guess not if it doesn't bother you. I said, are you worried about your carpet? He said, no. And I said, great. So anyway, back to these alternate entrances. And so we resumed the resume, and then I left. But I stayed behind and listen in at the door. And I heard him say, Carol, we need to get that woman in here. She is just what the security office needs. And Carol said, well, you know, we have to process the top secret clearance, and that takes about a month, as you know. And he said, no, I can't wait a month. Just skip that step, we'll waive it. He said, besides, I know the goods when I see it. Do you know that woman bled through the second half of our interview? So I worked there for about 3 years. I never got busted. I, in fact, gave notice after 3 years to go on to a job I was actually qualified for as a speechwriter, which they thought was a career change. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, she failed. She never learned what her upper limit of bullshit is. But you're wrong, because I did. The answer is, I have no limit. Thank you. All right. Wait.